right, we're here today. Today is our first podcast we've ever done for Hunt Post. For anybody who's not familiar with Hunt Post, basically we are a social network for the hunting, fishing, and outdoor community. We also have a marketplace for people that want to sell their products on it as well. If you want to learn more about that, you can go to huntpost.com and check our site out and go from there. And so today being our very first one, we're here with Austin with Colorado Custom Game Calls. And welcome, Austin, first off.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate you coming in. We're looking forward to learning more about your products and just what you do and duck hunting in general.
Mm-hmm.
So with that being said, Colorado Custom Game Calls, how did that come about? How long you had that going, and what do you foresee in the future?
You can't judge me here, okay?
Okay, we'll try not to.
So how it got started, I've always been an avid duck hunter. Even probably, I would say, right out of high school, usually.
Yeah. Really? You went to high school?
I did.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Good.
crazy.
Okay.
But out of high school, I had a buddy that basically wanted to get me into goose hunting, and we went out a couple times. Well, long story short, let's fast forward about, say, 2 years. I would say we went to, I'm not proud of this, my wife took me to a craft fair in Greeley, Colorado.
Okay.
And my partner now, Don, was selling bottle stoppers and pins.
Okay.
He was turning them on a lathe by hand, and he was doing the custom acrylics and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I thought they were really cool. Well, I've seen guys in the past spin duck calls on a lathe.
Okay.
And I asked him, I said, hey, can you make duck calls? And he's like, well, I've never done it. And I said, hey, let's try it. So before we became partners, I would buy them from him. Then I would turn around and sell them, and everything was kosher. We were cool with that. Well, one day I had a gentleman come up to me and ask, hey, do you guys have a business? You have something that I can reference this with? Because at that time, back in 2015, we were just doing everything through Facebook.
Gotcha.
Okay, so it was kind of word of mouth, very low key. We didn't know where this was going.
Yeah.
So I pitched the idea to Don. I said, hey, let's make this a legit thing. Let's make a business and make a little side money.
You said, let's quit our jobs and just do this.
We're not quite there yet, but we're getting there.
Yeah.
So basically, he's like, yeah, let's do it. So we made the logo, we made the business, made a website. We now sell throughout the United States and all over the world. If you would have asked me back in 2015, when we were doing this just on the low key, I would have never saw us getting to the point where we are today.
Sure.
We never saw it going that far.
Yeah.
In 2017 is when we officially started the business. We filed the LLC, got registered with the state, and Colorado Custom Game Calls was born from there on out.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. It is funny when you start something like that. You always hope that it might reach up here, but you're always like, is that really a reality?
Right.
You know, we'll just see where it goes. And then when it starts to actually take those steps, you start saying, oh, this could be a serious thing we can do.
Right. Well, and I mean, we were generating a lot of buzz, and the very unique thing with us is we can custom make stuff for you too.
Yeah.
So like just as an example here, I have a part of a coyote call that actually has real coyote hair in it.
Yeah.
I mean, you're never going to find anything like that in the store.
No.
Very unique stuff. We can custom build anything that you want. Like say you're a Denver Bronco fan, we can make blue and orange and make Bronco colors. I mean, we make custom bands also.
Yeah.
I mean, pretty much your sky's the limit. It's easier for me to tell you what we can't do versus what we can do.
Gotcha.
Because we've done so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome. So these rings, I mean, what's the purpose of these rings?
Just a simple touch. I mean, most duck calls, they don't have to have them, but it gives you another step in the build process because we've got different
so I see like what you're talking about here.
Right. And then with these specifically that I brought in here, like you can custom make stuff. Like we've had wedding anniversaries like this guy here, March 14th of 2020.
Yeah.
I mean, wedding anniversaries, people have signed them.
Yeah.
People have gotten really anything on them that they want.
Yeah.
It just gives you another level of customization.
Yeah. And what woman doesn't want this kind of ring for her anniversary?
Exactly. I get that a lot.
Yeah, I bet you do.
But I mean, even to take it a step farther, I mean, waterfowl is our bread and butter.
Yeah.
We do offer predator, elk, deer, turkey.
Yeah.
We do offer other species, but waterfowl is our bread and butter.
Yeah.
And usually waterfowl hunters that have dogs, they hunt with their dog religiously.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
We've actually been able to put dog ashes into a call before.
Wow.
I didn't bring any today, but
but still.
We have done that before, and they've even taken it a step further with the dog's name on the band.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's very, very unique, very cool.
That is.
Stuff that you're not going to find in a big box store.
Absolutely.
Unless we're selling it to them.
So basically, if someone wants to they have some very unique design or something very individual that they just basically send you guys a picture of it and say, put it on. This is the call I want, and kind of put it together. Or
so if it's very specific, they're going to have to call us. But on our website, they have a fill out the form portion of whatever call they're buying.
And then they can upload the picture.
Well, they can upload a picture, or they can tell us directly through text on that. Hey, I want a Denver Bronco call. I want orange and blue band.
Gotcha.
3.5 inches. I want a single or a double reed and a duck call or whatever that they're buying.
Okay, sounds good. Well, explain that a little bit. What's the difference between a single and a double reed duck call?
So double reed duck calls, they're going to be a little bit more forgiving. Okay. They're good for, I hate to say beginner calls because there's never really a beginner call.
Yeah.
But they have a lot more forgiveness than a single reed. Now, a single reed, which is my personal favorite, you can do a lot more finesse notes and get different notes than you can with a double reed.
Okay.
To me, personally, a single reed sounds more realistic than a double reed.
Yeah.
Double reeds are great. They're very effective.
Yeah.
You can get some very nasty quacks and feed chuckles, but with the single reeds, you can get those really fine-tuned notes like the Cajun squeals, things like the hiccup call, things of that nature, the bouncing hen, things of that nature with a single reed. A little bit better than a double reed.
Yeah.
To me, they run smoother.
Right.
When people ask me, hey, what's a good starter call? Or like I said, I hate to say beginner call.
Yeah.
It would be try to start out with a single reed. That way you don't get the bad double reed tendencies.
Gotcha. You don't have just a recording of like Donald Duck. You say, here, listen to this. And
no, but I do get a lot. I do get a lot of questions through email or, hey, how do I do this note? How do I do this note? Well, that went into another business venture for us, seminars.
Yeah.
So we are now doing seminars in person right now out in Wiggins, Colorado at the Firehouse. And we basically take a 2-hour segment and we try to teach you the ins and outs of duck and goose calling.
That's awesome.
So you're getting that one-on-one feedback where you wouldn't get that before.
Yeah.
The YouTube videos are great. I even have some on our YouTube channel, and I also have them on Hunt Post as well.
Yeah.
Tutorials of how to do certain notes, especially in goose calling. People struggle with goose calling.
Yeah.
It's a very good tool, but you're not getting the feedback back on what you're doing wrong.
Yeah.
And those seminars are a great tool for that.
Yeah, I would say. And, the reality is since you're not allowed to just go on the golf course to shoot the geese, you've got to learn how to get them otherwise.
That's right. That's right. Over corn, over wheat.
Yeah, there you go. That kind of thing.
Out in the country.
Which do you prefer? Do you prefer goose hunting or duck hunting?
Me personally, I'm a goose hunter.
Okay.
I've always been a goose hunter.
Okay.
Not saying that duck hunting is bad. It's just that the opportunities out in Colorado are very, very limited.
Makes sense. And we got a wealth of goose.
Yes. Oh, yeah. There's people that travel from all over the world and even all over the country to come to northern Colorado.
Oh, I believe that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean,
it's one of the waterfowl stops. It's almost like Stuttgart, Arkansas.
Yeah.
It's like that out here in northern Colorado.
That's crazy. Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah, good deal. So, I mean, I assume you kind of did goose and duck hunting most of your life.
I would say, for half of my life, I would say easily.
Yeah. Is that something you learned from like your dad, carried down from family tradition type thing?
Actually, it was from my buddy Jason. Okay. My dad was never into waterfowl. He was always into pheasant, deer.
Yeah.
So he's taken me hunting, but pheasant was more of our deal.
Okay.
When I was a senior in high school, my buddy Jason, like I mentioned earlier, he took me out I graduated back in 2008.
Yeah. Let's not even go into when I graduated, okay? I don't even want to hear this.
So he was the one that kind of turned me on to waterfowl hunting back then.
Yeah.
And then it snowballed and became a bigger passion of mine.
Yeah.
Almost every weekend I'm out there.
I gotcha.
So,
yeah.
And then it turned into a business.
Yeah.
Which again, I never would have guessed in a million years.
It's great when you can take a passion and turn it into a business. Now, I've seen this happen with so many people. The problem is the business takes off and you don't get out to get to do your passion quite as much.
Right.
You know? And you see this happen with people a lot.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So there's always that fine line on you hope that this leads to doing more of this. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it reverses, which isn't a bad problem. I mean, that means you're selling a lot of product.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And you're probably making a living at it.
Not quite. I still have a day job.
Well, I'm saying if you get to that point,
then
by then you're making a living at it.
here, I would say very, very soon, we're at the point where right now we're just I call it a 2.5 man operation. So it's me and my partner, Don Thornock. We are the two. And then his son-in-law, Garrett, he's our polisher. So he comes in 2 times a week and he'll polish whatever we have for the week.
Okay.
So that's where the half man comes in.
Yeah.
Eventually, we're going to get to the point where if we ever do get into real big marketplace like on Hunt Post or in the brick and mortar buildings, we're gonna have to bump up our staff because I'm the only one that's tuning.
Yeah.
Don's doing the pouring, I do the tuning, and basically all the social media work on top of that.
Yeah.
So I'm only one guy. So if we ever get to the point where we are making it big, we are gonna have to do something is to bring some of our staff farther in.
Yeah, I get that for sure. Yeah. So with that being said, I know very little about duck hunting.
Okay.
Now, I've always been a big game hunter. When I was a kid, the very first thing I started out doing was squirrel hunting. Now, I grew up in Northern Virginia.
Okay.
And went squirrel hunting, rabbit hunting, pheasant hunting, shooting crows. And then when my parents were around, shooting things that I probably shouldn't have been shooting. You know how that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
You know, once you get into shooting, I mean, you want to shoot everything.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
For
you
sure.
want to become a marksman. You know.
Yeah.
So, but then that led into deer hunting, bow hunting for deer. Then that led to me coming out here and elk hunting and things like that. Point being, I've never really done much of elk hunting, or I'm sorry, duck hunting, goose hunting, anything like that.
Yeah.
Have very little knowledge of it. I mean, I know the basics of it. I mean, do you guys have like in-ground blinds at certain fields that you use, or above ground blinds that you use? How does most of that work?
Privately. I am going to warn you, it is a little pricey at some spots. Farmers, you got to pay to play almost, I would say.
And that's where things have gone. It wasn't like when I was a kid where you went up and knocked on a farmer's door, asked me if you could hunt. Go on out there, go ahead.
Yeah.
You know, have a good day.
We still have some of those farmers, but just to give you an example, just in my area alone, out in Northeast Colorado, there's 9 different guides, clubs, and outfitters.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's very competitive through there. And like I said, it's a very big market out there because of the amount of birds that we can get.
Sure.
Luckily for me, on a personal note, I do have some private land that I can access myself. If we don't do pits that are in the ground, which are actually dug about 4 feet, they have a lid and you can do heaters in them. I mean, it's bougie.
Yeah.
I mean, you can cook in them and stuff like that.
Yeah.
If we don't do anything like that, you can always do an A-frame or lay down blinds or what we call the old man way, laying in the decoys.
Okay.
It's a little dirtier. You're going to get, mud and stuff, but
that's earning your stripes before you can get into the ground.
Right,
you know,
exactly.
there you
gotta
go.
own your place.
Yeah, absolutely.
But basically, you could take silhouette decoys, you can take full body decoys, shell decoys, and you set them out in a formation. Usually, people say set them up in a J or a Nike swoosh or a C. Some people do X's, W's. What you're doing is you're creating pockets for geese to land in. Geese typically don't like to land over other geese.
Okay.
They like their own space.
Okay.
They're very aggressive, especially in the winter when they're feeding.
Gotcha.
Especially lesser Canadas. Those are the subspecies of greater Canadas, or the smaller birds.
Okay.
Look the exact same, except the size difference.
Okay. I did not know that.
Yeah. So and there's more than that. There's cacklers. There's a whole list of them. But you want to make pockets for them to land in, and your goal is to bring them into you at about, the closer the better, but average is about 30 to 40 yards is the typical shot range, typically on a shotgun. Obviously, the closer the better, and then as soon as they got feet down, they're cupped up, they're locked, they're ready to go. That's when you pull up and hopefully get to pull the trigger on something.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's some calling techniques. There's different types of calling that you can do, like clucks and moans and things of that nature, but you just want to bring those birds to you.
Yeah.
And you got flags, you're out there flagging them from 2 miles away, and they can see that.
That's crazy.
Geese don't have a very good depth perception. So if you ever watch a goose land, even out here in the city, when you see them land, they're pumping very, very hard. Probably the hardest pumping that they're doing in their entire flight.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is because they don't have any depth perception to see how far they are from the ground.
Really?
Yeah. So they pick up on shine and shadows, things of that nature.
Gotcha.
Distance themselves on how far they are.
Okay.
From the ground,
Okay, so when you're saying to use flags, I mean, what type of flags? I mean,
legit, it is a stick with mostly mylar or canvas.
Okay.
Some plastic. Some people make them out of plastic, but It's literally got two little wings on it,
Yeah.
and you're shaking it in the air, and you're making it look like a
Just
goose landing.
something that catches their attention,
That's
basically.
exactly the movement.
Yeah, the movement. Yeah.
The more realistic that you can look in the field and the more realistic you can sound, the better off you're going to be.
Well, sure. Yeah.
And I mean, Colorado in general is a very big traffic heavy run state.
Yeah.
And what I mean by traffic is when you're scouting for birds, you're scouting flight lines.
Yeah.
So if you want to be where they were at, yeah, absolutely. But you might not have access to that.
Yeah.
So you're scouting their pathway from where they were roosting to where they're at now. For, say, in the morning, you're going to hunt. Okay, they went over field number 1 for me. I'm going to go hunt field 1 because they flew over it. And then that's what we call running traffic.
Yeah.
Now, if you're on the field that they landed in, that's called the X.
Okay.
So you want to try to get on the X, but it doesn't always work out that way.
Sure.
So then you're running traffic is what we call it.
That's why it's called hunting instead of shooting.
That's right, exactly. That's why you're flagging to try to get them to traffic to you.
And as close as possible. Yeah. I assume 12 gauge.
You can do 20. I've even had a gentleman that done 410.
Yeah.
Before, and the load's a little bit quicker on his 410, but I mean it's like that.
Well, exactly.
It's pretty small, but I mean we got to call them in close. But I would say for kids, 20 gauge is great. 12 gauge for adults. I mean you can even go up to 10 gauge, but
10,
but then you're going into the higher bit rounds there, and it might hurt your shoulder a little bit.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I mean, I think it's pretty typical when you're either a kid or you're just learning to shoot and you're just getting comfortable with it. I think that natural progression is the 410 to the 20 to the 12.
Right.
Usually the 12 takes care of whatever. I mean, you can just amp it up to a higher shot density or whatever you need for the 12 gauge,
Right.
And usually that's as far as you need to go.
Yeah, usually, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I hunt with nothing but 12 gauge.
Yeah.
Personally.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely, I mean, I've turkey hunted a fair amount. I mean, the 12 gauge always has done the trick for that. I mean, I assume if you really, really, really wanted to get pinpoint, you'd get out there with a 22 or something.
They might frown upon that, but yeah.
What's funny about that is my dad, him and his brother, my uncle, they would take 22 casings when they were teenagers.
Really?
And one would throw the 22 casing and the other would take a 22 and try to hit it.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And they would hit like 1 out of 50, but when you hit that one, it's like the greatest moment of your life all of a sudden,
Target practice right there.
That is target practice, but I will say something about both of them. You can throw a duck, a pheasant, a rabbit, or anything full speed, and they are good shots.
Oh, really? No kidding.
They can hit just about anything. My grandfather was the same way with rabbits. I don't think I ever saw him miss a rabbit.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
See, and you gotta practice too. You could either do with trap or clay shooting.
Yeah.
Clay shooting's great for waterfowl.
It is.
If you're wanting to practice on your shot, go clay shooting somewhere.
That's just good for everything.
Yeah.
It makes you learn if you are someone who wants to get into hunting. There's no perfect shots rarely that you're ever getting at game.
Right.
I mean, game just constantly moves, I mean, if you're deer hunting, you're going to have a fair amount of shots shooting at deer that are walking, running. I mean, you're going to get that standing still shot lots of times. Of course, people who are avid deer hunters, they know how to get them to stop lots of times.
Right.
Whistling, grunt calls, whatever it may be.
Mer.
There you go. The mer is everybody has that in their arsenal, So skeet shooting is just one of those things that gets you dialed in. I don't care what kind of hunting you're doing. It teaches you to see the target, react, and shoot.
Right.
Which is what you got to do. You got to be able to do that. You don't always have the time needed to wait for the perfect shot.
So in waterfowl, especially with goose hunting, and maybe a little bit more or less in duck hunting, but you're doing so many different things, especially if you're calling.
Yeah.
So to give you a scenario, say you're in a pit, okay? Well, you're down there, you're kneeling down, or you're sitting on your chair. You got to lift the lid so you have to read the birds. You got to see what they're doing. You got to see what shots you're going to call, where they're landing, because you might have 500 back here, but you got 2 right here.
Yeah.
Or you got 500 here and you got 20 back here that landed.
Yeah.
So you got to basically dissect and read the waterfowl.
Yeah.
And you're trying to keep the lid closed because you don't want them to see you. You got to watch your guys down the line, and then if you are the shot caller, you got to flip the lid open, come up with your shotgun, take the safety off, aim at a bird, pull the trigger on that bird, and then move to your next one.
Yeah.
So it's a very quick process.
Yeah, I bet.
And you got to practice that.
Yeah.
And a lot of guys, especially when they do in layout blinds, Layout blinds, you're laying in a coffin, basically.
Yeah.
The doors over you, you got corn stalks or something.
Yeah. It's good practice for later.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. You gotta spring those doors open, you gotta grab your shotgun, bring it up to your shoulder, get your aim, pull the trigger, and that's all one motion. And
Yeah.
you've got less than, I would say, average 4 seconds.
Yeah.
And that's about it.
Yeah.
So you got to be quick on the draw.
Yeah.
And skeet shooting, if you can come up and hit on that target,
Uh-huh.
whether it's on the skeet or on a bird,
Yeah.
you're bettering yourself in general.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Yeah, I mean, that moment when you know it's go time, that's just, no matter what you're hunting,
Yeah.
it's just an exciting moment.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know? And then when you see, if you're shooting a goose, whatever it may be, and you see that you nailed it and it's going down, it's just a great
There's nothing better. There's nothing that gets my heart going than that.
I guarantee it.
Especially when they're coming in, locked in from,
Yeah.
say they're 20 feet off the deck and
Yeah.
they're 35 yards out, and you called that animal in from a mile, half a mile. I mean, that's saying something. And they're coming to you.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not having to climb in the mountains to go after my elk.
Well, that's true. That's true. No doubt about
Figure
it.
that out, backpack. That's not fun.
Yeah, I can see you out there quartering out, little bag over your shoulder like you're a homeless guy.
Oh, yeah, right.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
So with that being said, I mean, do you have some kind of amazing recipes for geese or what do you do with them? I mean, what's kind of your go-to with the meat?
So I do two things with the
Okay.
goose meat. Number one is I take a breast and I defat it, deskin it, take the silver skin off, and you don't have to do anything with it. Just make sure it's clean.
Yeah.
I put it in a crock pot with water,
Okay.
and then take a half barbecue bottle of sauce and just squirt it in there in the water.
Okay.
The water needs to cover the breast. Okay. Put the barbecue sauce in there, about half a bottle. Turn it on low. You can even turn it on medium on your slow cooker. And basically, it's pulled goose like pulled pork.
Yeah.
And it's got a barbecue flavor to it. It's real easy. It's good with chips, things like that. My main thing that I do with it, though, is sticks, snack sticks.
Okay.
I use High Plains seasonings.
Yeah.
Basically, you do a grind with I do a 30-70 blend.
Okay.
So 30% pork, whether that's bacon or bacon ends, something with pork fat in it.
Yeah.
Or pork fat in it. And you grind that all together. You put the cure in, put the seasoning in, let it sit in the fridge overnight.
Yeah.
And then I bake it in the oven after I case them at about 200 for about 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
Best snack sticks ever.
Really?
You won't even know that it's goose.
That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I've heard now obviously this is people that are maybe not as avid as you are in hunting, but they're like, well, the problem is it's always so greasy or it's always so fatty, So, and I know that's a problem that people have with bear meat as well. Some people are like, I like the flavor of bear meat. It's just so greasy and fatty, type of thing.
It's a greasy meat, but if you do it right and if you grind it and do the math right and then do that High Plains seasoning is very good in the goose meat, and that cure just binds it together.
Yeah.
Put it in some casings, smoke it in the oven.
Yeah.
Traeger, whatever you got.
Yeah.
It's you won't even know it's goose meat.
Yeah.
I've got guys at work that bug me for it year round.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And I do it in like snack sticks or 1.5 casings.
How many geese can you kill a year in Colorado?
Well, you can do 5 per day.
5 per day. Okay.
Your possession limit's 15.
Okay.
But you can go, basically, they changed it last year from basically Halloween to almost Valentine's Day.
Okay.
So that's how long the season is.
Wow.
Typical licensed resident of Colorado is going to run you with the federal duck stamp about $85-$90.
Okay.
You got to get your small game, your Colorado waterfowl stamp, your habitat stamp if you haven't bought one yet that year, and your federal duck stamp. That's what you have to have to hunt waterfowl.
Yeah.
So,
okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Now, what about duck? I mean, do you like eating duck?
I love duck.
Do you really?
I love mallard duck.
Okay. All right.
Now, if you're talking about McGanzers, not so much.
Yeah.
But mallard duck, they're very good. Medium rare in a pan.
Yeah.
And you just saute it in butter. Best thing I'll ever eat.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Now, I've only had duck. I've never had duck that, like, I was at someone's house and it was like harvested duck by hunting.
You had like roasted duck.
I've had roasted duck in restaurants, things like that. I'm not a big fan of it personally.
It's not the same. It's not.
I can only imagine. There's got to be a difference there, but it works, I guess, on the same concept. If you go to one of the few restaurants around that'll serve like elk or something like that, I'm like, the elk I have in my house doesn't taste like this.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So I don't know if it's because they know that the average person coming into that restaurant doesn't have the palate, let's say, for wild game or whatever it may be, that they do as much as they can to make it as a domesticated flavor
Right.
as they can so that it appeals to people.
Like beef, kind
Yeah,
of.
like beef does. So that probably plays into their recipes that they're using, as opposed to the recipe you're using
Yeah,
for yours.
absolutely.
You're getting more of a pure form of it,
Right.
and so
Well, and the nice thing is whatever I harvest that morning, I can have it on my plate that for lunch that afternoon or for that evening.
yeah,
That's the beauty of it. And it's sauteed in what I want, the butter, the
Yeah.
parsley, whatever.
yeah,
Medium rare duck is one of the best things that you can eat,
yeah,
in my opinion.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and the reality is too, when the things that you're buying from a grocery store or a restaurant, you don't know the background of what all that thing was fed. Was it raised on a farm? Was it fed antibiotics? Was it fed steroids? All this kind of stuff. That's one of the big benefits to hunting these days that we have.
Especially for big game.
Especially with big game.
Look what happened during COVID.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the meat prices skyrocket. I mean, and then there's hunters that are out there in the mountains harvesting their elk or their deer or their muley or whatever, and they got full freezers because they went out and harvested their own animals.
Exactly.
But then you got not to get political or anything, but you got the non-hunters of the world that are against that. Well, then when you have situations like COVID or you have supply chain issues or meat prices are through the roof, and that just aids it, right?
It does. And so since we've kind of touched on a little bit of this, you may or may not have seen this article that, Biden wants to end lead being used in all forms of hunting and fishing, starting out on federal lands. And then, of course, they want to spread it. Now, I know the states can dictate a lot of this, but I know that some states are starting to recognize lead in an animal. You shoot it, gets away, something else eats it, it gets some lead in it, and stuff like that. I think that's a very small sample. Yes, it can happen. Yes, there probably are incidences of it happening. It's not a widespread problem.
I would say it's less than 0.5%.
I would say so as well.
And that's being an exaggeration on that.
But this is going into the non-hunter versus the hunter thing, where the non-hunters don't know enough about guns. Let's start out there.
Sure.
And then they don't know enough about the hunting aspect to know what the benefits are of killing your own game.
Right.
But they've been trained from the day they were born to you go to a grocery store and you buy your meat. You don't know anything about that meat.
Right.
You don't know where that meat actually came from, what was done to that meat. So you just think, hey, it's in a grocery store, it's got to be good for me.
It was treated.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I mean, I do have a little bit of meat packing industry background back in right after high school.
Yeah.
I can say that it is one of the most humane ways through processing, and they do a very good job. But going back to the supply chain crisis, when you're paying $25 for ribeyes or $15, $20 for a pound of hamburger, what's that tell you?
Well, exactly.
It's not just accessible to everybody.
Yeah, exactly. So, and by the way, I don't want more people hunting. Leave more game for me.
Exactly. I'll take all the goose meat you want.
There you go. There you go. Yeah. So, the benefits of eating an animal that hasn't been tainted in any kind of a way.
Right.
There's a lot of benefit to that. And the reality is even beef or any of this kind of stuff, if you went out in the middle of a field and found a cow living in the wild and you shot that red meat's not that bad for you like people claim it to be.
Right.
Is it going to be a little bit higher in cholesterol and some, fat? That's the nature of just beef,
Right.
But as far as all of the problems that we're seeing with people these days, a lot of that has to do with what that cow was fed. And now anything antibiotics or anything like that was given it to it have now came through and they're now part of you. And those are causing a lot of the health problems that people are having.
Right. Well, look at chicken.
Well,
you get a lot of salmonella in chicken.
Yeah.
I have never gotten salmonella through my duck or my goose.
There you go.
You know what I mean?
There you go.
I mean, I got to go harvest it, but the chicken
that part's fun.
Yeah. And the bad thing with the chicken industry, and I'm not bashing them by any means, but if one bird gets something, that whole section's bad. Well, it could be the whole farm at that point.
Well, yeah, because they're living in a space this big,
Yeah,
right next to the next one, right to the next to the next one.
Right,
So
exactly.
they stand no chance if something gets in there, basically.
Exactly.
So. So anyway, well, you know what? We've solved most of the world's problems here in the last couple minutes of this. We've learned about duck hunting. We've learned about your great products. We want everybody to check you out a lot more. What's the best way for everybody to find you?
Well, Hunt Post for one.
Yep.
Other social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram.
Okay.
I am on TikTok. I'm not doing any dances, but we have
Come
a
on.
little fun over
We
there.
want to see you out there dancing around some geese that you just shot.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
And then obviously the website, ColoradoCustomGameCalls.com.
Okay, sounds good. And everybody check out huntpost.com if you want to learn more about that as well. And you can find out more about his great calls and his great business. So thanks, everybody.